Coming up next on The Voice of Alabama Politics, will Roe be overturned? Also, the January 6th committee wants to talk to Mo Brooks. And Mike Durant is going to have to answer for his sister.
I want the truth! You can't handle the truth!
No, Mike, it's you that can't handle the truth. All this and much, much more coming up next on The V. Welcome to The Voice of Alabama Politics, where we tackle the tough issues so you have the hard facts. I'm your host, Bill Britt, and today I'm joined by Josh Moon, investigative reporter and columnist at APR. Welcome, Josh.
What the hell is everybody?
Well, as we were talking earlier, this is kind of like Fox News. Two white guys sitting around talking about issues that we don't know anything about.
Yeah, that's right. That is correct. Yes.
Well, some of our team had other things to deal with, and some of them just said, heck with you today.
Y'all got it. Go ahead.
Yeah. All right, well, we got it. Hey, Mike Durant is now he's getting scrutiny over the fact that his father, Leon, basically raped his own daughter for years and years. And when this came to Mike Durant's attention, he acknowledged that it was true to his sister. But then when it became public knowledge, he denied his sister, called her crazy, said it never happened, that there was something wrong with her. Kyle Whitmire, this past week, wrote about this at AL.com. And when Kyle said, you're going to have to answer for your sister, they went on the attack against Kyle, calling him a hack and saying he was carrying water for Katie Britt and all these things. This might work in D.C. It doesn't really work that well in Alabama. But you have talked to Mary Durant. You know Mary Durant. You spent more time with her than any reporter. She is not a person that's crazy. She is a person who suffered greatly at the hands of her father, and then her brother betrayed her when she needed him most.
Yeah, you're exactly right. She is, she's since married. She's married now and lives in North Carolina. And she is she's a very, very nice woman. She's honestly one of the nicer people I've ever met. And she's not this, I don't know what in the world he talks about when he says she did something to their family and all this. She will tell you, she'll walk you through every step of the way of what happened, and how she fought for years to overcome this through therapy. I mean, just hours and hours and hours of therapy and working through things that happened, which, is understandable given what happened to her, the trauma that occurred to her for more than, I want to say 17 years. With her father. At some points she was being molested daily by her father. At night, would come into her bedroom at night, and he admitted these things. Her father admitted these things to Mike Durant, and he went later on a show and tried to tell people that, as Kyle pointed out in his column, that it wasn't as bad as it seemed, and his father wasn't as bad of a guy as he seemed. He was a great father to him. And matter of fact, he said something similar recently on a radio interview after we reported on this. It's just it's something that you need to answer for. I mean, if you're going to run for office, I tend to leave a lot of personal stuff out of politics. I tend to push it aside in a lot of ways. But man, when this sort of thing happens, this is kind of a question of judgment and character on somebody. And nobody's saying that Mike Durant was involved in the abuse. Nobody's saying that. So that that sort of thing, he tried that attack at first, after we reported on it, and it's a shallow attack. And honestly, he's going to have to sit down at some point and try to answer for some of this. And I think the reason that he's not doing it is because there is no good answer for it.
Well, I mean, the thing that appalls me is the fact that we know this happened. We know Mike Durant knows this happened. I mean, you would think that as he tries to portray himself as some honorable, stand-up kind of guy, if this happened to your sister and you abandoned her and then you lied about the events so that it wouldn't come back on you, this shows to me a shallowness of character that is even remarkable in this day and age. I mean, when women hear this story and hear how cowardly he acted toward his sister, they are outraged at Mike Durant because he could have stood up. He didn't have to write those books and say that his father was this war hero that he admired. He could have simply told the truth. But again, Mike Durant has painted a fantasy around who he is. And part of this fantasy is that he had this war hero father who was, in fact, a rapist.
Yeah, no, you're right. It's right now. Maybe there is some other explanation that Mike Durant could provide out there, but. The only thing when he says the stupid things that he says in answer to this, I mean, everybody with a thinking, machine in their head, looks at that and says that's nonsense, and then they arrive at the most likely conclusion, which is there's no good answer that he has for these things, and what he chose was a story that benefited him and his life more than protecting his sister would have.
Again, the documentation in the court documents shows that he did this thing, the father agreed to it. Sure. Want to switch on? One of our other senatorial candidates in Alabama has some problems, nothing unusual. Mo Brooks has been asked to appear before the January 6th committee to give testimony about what Donald Trump said to him about overthrowing the election, even after Joe Biden was in office. And Mo Brooks gave him the Bronx cheer, Josh, and he's surprised in that.
No, honestly, they're there for a span of a few weeks. Mo Brooks went on this scorched earth campaign where he was just going to take everybody with him, and I don't know what's happened in the weeks since, but maybe I guess he's changed his mind in some way, shape, or form. But he was perfectly happy to go on all the media outlets and tell them about what Donald Trump asked him to do and how involved he was with this and what was going on behind the scenes. And I would say they have every right to ask him for a little more information. I mean, you basically have accused the former president here of trying to coerce you to breaking the law, violating the Constitution, and stopping the peaceful transfer of power. I think that you want to talk to that guy. What was that conversation like? Do you have it recorded?
I really am appalled and that we do not have the integrity today. Some of these people do not have the integrity to stand up and tell the truth. But we're going to have to leave it right there. You're watching the voice of Alabama politics. We'll be right back with two white guys talking.
Ivey shut the churches down but kept the abortion clinics open. Ivey is aiding and abetting murder when she allowed the abortion mills to stay open. Lindy Blanchard is a defender of life. She adopts children. She stands for life. She's the most pro-life candidate for governor I've ever known. That's why I'm supporting Lindy Blanchard for governor of the state of Alabama, the governor we need.
So you got caught speeding. But this time you got more than a ticket.
What are you in for?
Vehicular homicide.
Stop speeding before speeding stops you. Drive safe, Alabama. A message from your Alabama Department of Transportation.
I'm Donald Trump, and I love Alabama. As many of you know, there are few issues facing our nation
as important as election integrity and election fraud. This is why the people of the great state of Alabama must work together to make it easier to vote and harder to cheat. So get out, register to vote, and get a photo ID so you can make your voice heard and decide the future of our great country. Thank you.
Welcome back to the V, or Two White Guys Talking. Josh, you said that might make a good podcast. I don't know who'd listen to it, but
only other white guys would talk. I mean, you know,
Joe Rogan or Josh Rogan or one of the Rogaine.
No, Joe Rogan. Yeah.
He's made a fortune.
He does okay for himself.
One white guy talking to himself. You know, and I want to get back on this. I mean, look, all the candidates, Katie Britt, Bo Brooks, Mike Durant, are all pandering for votes right now. They're saying whatever they've got to say, doing whatever they've got to do to get votes. But Katie Britt and Mo Brooks have agreed to debate. Durant says no, he's not debating. John Wall, the head of the ALGOP, Alabama GOP, arranged for these debates. He talked to the candidates. They gave him multiple dates, and Chairman Wall says that they just couldn't get Durant to get on board with debating. I know this is becoming a thing, Josh, but is it really fair that we not see all three of the candidates on a stage answering some questions on policy and positions?
No, voters have to demand such a thing, and I would say in the case of cases of Katie Britt and Mike Durant specifically, you want to know more about them because they are relatively newcomers to. I mean, Katie Britt's obviously been in politics for a long time, but running for office herself, this is our first time. People want to hear what she's going to do, how she's going to handle situations. Same thing for Mike Durant. Nobody knows who Mike Durant is outside of a handful of people in the Huntsville area, and so it might be nice to say, what would you do in this situation? What would you do? How would you handle this? Or to question some of the things he's done and how much he knows about the state of Alabama, or, why you turned your back on your sister. Those things might be good things to answer and to have debates about. And I think, in the case of Mo Brooks, there are probably a lot of questions you would like to answer, but we basically know who he is. He's been there for a decade or more, and so you can look at his record. With the other two guys, you don't really have a record, so it'd be nice to know what they're going to do.
Right. Well, and Mike Durant has basically ran a television campaign, and we're going to see if that can work in Alabama. I mean, where Mo Brooks is out every day meeting with people, and Katie Britt's out every day meeting with people. Durant, I saw some video of Durant. He'll rush in, speak, and then rush out. And he's got like a couple of bodyguard-looking guys with him. I saw a reporter shout a question at him. And one thing this guy is good at is not answering questions. I mean, he just walked through like he was, General Stonewall Jackson or something. He didn't look to the right, to the left, or anything else. Of course, one of the people he did talk to told me, he said he's just, and he said, he's just kind of an arrogant Yankee. But you can't tell that on TV, right? You got to meet somebody to know if they're an arrogant Yankee, because only we Southerners know what an arrogant Yankee looks like when we meet them.
Right, exactly. Well, and this is important. It's whoever wins this seat is likely to hold it for a considerable amount of time. Because it is very hard in this day and age to defeat an incumbent, especially an incumbent in the party that is, controlling the state where they reside. And that would be the case for Mike Durant, Mo Brooks, Katie Britt. They're going to be the Republican person that probably holds this seat. I don't believe the Democrats are going to be able to upset them, barring some crazy unforeseen circumstances.
Right.
But, and so they're going to hold this for a while. So it would be nice to know, who these guys are. And there's a reason why we have debates. Yeah. And especially, to me, I would say this. I think the primary debates are very important, because you do get those nuances there, and I think people treat them more fairly in a lot of ways than some of the other debates. But that's just me. I like to know who I'm voting for.
Well, and one of the things is we hear a lot of times they say, well, they're Republicans, they're going to go to D.C. and they're pretty much all going to vote the same. I don't know that.
Yeah.
I don't know that Mo Brooks and Katie Britt are going to vote the same. I don't know that Durant and Katie Britt or Mo Brooks are going to vote the same. I mean, basically, Mo's going to vote against everything, but we don't know what he might vote for. We don't know what Katie Britt and Mike Durant might vote against, and we don't know what they vote for. So it'd be nice to know, but Mike Durant's not
and
going
I'll
to
say, just as an example here, I mean, look at Richard Shelby and Mo Brooks. They're both Republicans, but would you put those two guys in the same category?
No, that is not a case of Dumb and Dumber. That's for sure.
Yeah, right. Yeah. I mean, it's there are nuances there that you should flesh out.
Yeah. We got about 2 minutes left. I got two things I want to get to if possible. Governor Ivey, who's not debating, and why should she? These are not serious candidates that she's running against, in the sense that they're not serious in that they're getting traction, right? Mm-hmm. You debate if your opponents are getting traction. If they're not, don't give them oxygen. That's just politics. But she is leading into the home stretch. Josh, I don't see anything happening. You look at what happened Tuesday in Ohio. You had a lot of really right-wing candidates running against Ohio Governor Mike Durant, and he sailed to the primary win. I think the same thing's going to be true for Ivey.
Yeah, I think so too. She's tried to move herself a little more right in some things. She refused to meet with Biden and over the week, or this week, and so I think she's going to be fine regardless. It's just whether or not she's going to be able to get over the 50% line, and ultimately I think she probably will.
Well, the polls that I've been privy to put her there, but you either run scared or run unopposed. She's got a whole lot. She's got a crowded field she's got to get through. I wish we could talk about this, because I've lately been reminded about Abraham Lincoln's speech at Cooper Union, and where he ended talking about the expansion of slavery and what we needed to do about slavery. And he said that he believed that right made might. But I think we're living in a political era, Josh, where it's might makes right. It's brutish, and as long as you can muster enough hostility, you're going to win. But unfortunately, I'm going to have to just say that's the last word for me on that one.
Okay.
You're watching The V, the voice of Alabama politics. We'll be right back.
You'll never guess what 400,000 people in the U.S. were using when they crashed their cars last year. No, not this. This. Distracted driving will kill you. Drive safe, Alabama. A message from your Alabama Department of Transportation.
Hi, everybody. I'm Randy Owen. I want to encourage you to join me in voting yes on the State Parks Amendment on Alabama's primary election ballot May the 24th. Voting yes signals your support for outdoor recreation and will help maintain and expand all 21 state parks, from DeSoto State Park on Lookout Mountain to Gulf State Park on the coast. Our state parks are one of the many reasons I'm glad my home's in Alabama. Hope you'll join me in voting yes for our state parks on May 24th.
Welcome back to The V, the voice of Alabama politics. As everyone in the political world knows, that a draft of a Supreme Court opinion issued by Justice Samuel Alito Jr. and signed on by the court's conservative majority, it looks like, will overturn Roe v. Wade, which has been the law of the land some 50 years, and it has been reaffirmed back in 92. However, if that draft goes through as it is, and we don't know that that's true, it will outlaw abortion. It will open up abortion in lots of states, outlaw it, expand it, whatever. There will no longer be any federal control. Let me be very clear. Josh, in Alabama, we have a trigger law, and that law will go into effect as soon as Steve Marshall can put forward a request to Myron Thomas to let that go through, and he will have no recourse but to let that law go into effect.
Yeah, and I assume that's, what's going to take place, and we will have one of the more draconian laws in the entire nation, in which we have no exceptions for rape or incest, and we're in the very real world here of having a situation where you have a very young girl who has been raped and impregnated by a family member or anyone else that is now forced to carry that baby to term. And and for people that think that's hyperbole, this same situation has happened in this state. Happens all the time, as a matter of fact. Just ask people who deal with things in family courts. Exactly how common these things are, and I think a lot of people would be surprised. And it's it's a shame, really. It's a shame on a number of different fronts. It's, first and foremost, it's a shame for women who have relied upon to be able to make health decisions between themselves and their doctors for so long, and had those rights protected. It's a shame from a legal standpoint for that opinion, which is, a lot of it is just pure fiction that was written. If that thing comes out as written, that'll be a black eye on the court that I don't know that they'll ever really get over. And the leak itself of the documents and whoever did it, I think that's a problem for the court as well. And it's just all in all a pretty awful week for everybody, for the country.
Well, and I think, though, you will find many, many people on the right who this day have worked very diligently, many of them since childhood, to see the day come when Roe is overturned. The sincere belief that they are protecting the life of the unborn. I've read lots of commentary, and one of the interesting things, commentary on that, and I've heard this from pro-life individuals, is that if you put in the rape and incest clause, the condition there, what you're saying is that's inconsistent, because if all life is precious, then that doesn't matter that it was a product of rape and incest. We can all disagree on all of these points heartily. But these are the positions that people have taken, and it's so emotional and so visceral. I want to switch to the politics for a second, though. This, to me, because we actually know Republican politicians, right? We know the difference between what they say and what they pass and what they really believe in their personal lives. This, to me, smacks of the dog that finally caught the car. And while there are a lot of people who want this to happen, I know plenty of Republican lawmakers that are going, "Holy cow, we didn't see this."
Yeah, it's listen. You look at polling, even in very conservative states. You look at polling overall, and this is a very unpopular thing. Overturning Roe is very, very unpopular nationwide. It's very unpopular in some in southern states. In Alabama, I would put it at probably 50-50. People could point to amendments and all that other sort of thing, but when it comes right down to whether or not you wanted to overturn this and restrict, abortions for everybody like this, first of all, Alabama's law that they passed is very, very hugely unpopular, and they know it. And you're right, it is kind of like the dog that caught the car. And in a couple of cases, I think it's going to be the dog that caught the car on the front end of the car. But because, it's going to cause some problems. And, let's be honest, right now, for months, the only story that we've heard around here is inflation, the terrible economy. And what's old Brandon doing? Yeah. I bet you won't get 15 words about inflation between now and the primary, certainly. And you probably won't get very many words about it between now and November because this is going to take over the conversation, and rightfully so. This is a huge, monumental shift in policy for our nation and for the women who vote. And, that's you can't lose the women for Republicans. And everything is razor thin at this point. And I think there's going to be blowback on this that's felt for a long, long time.
I do feel like the people that have sincere beliefs on that, they've struggled very hard, and they don't think that the consequence to them of protecting unborn is much greater than any of the other aspects of this. Mm-hmm. But I've talked to several young people since that came out, and I mean young people in the sense of some 20, 25, 30-year-olds, even younger.
That's young. That's young. That's young to me. That's fine.
That are worried about, what does this mean for other rights? And while Justice Alito said this is specific to this, I don't think you can believe this court.
It doesn't work that way. It doesn't work that way, I
don't think you can believe this court.
Yeah, once you overturn something that is was set as precedent and then confirmed by a very conservative court as precedent later, nothing is sacred and nothing is safe anymore. And listen, I know what you're saying about with the people who hold these beliefs, and I'll say this: I would take them much more seriously in these sincerely held beliefs about the sanctity of life if at the same time they had fought just as hard to protect the children that were born, all right, and had established better healthcare systems, better prenatal care, better maternal care, more safety for things, and lowered our the death rate for children. That's something that hadn't been done. We didn't expand Medicaid. We've turned our backs on a lot of women in these positions, and we know it's been a problem for years, and yet we don't do much about it. We had a child tax credit that was protecting kids and giving them something to eat on a regular basis, and we killed that as well.
Well, Josh, I agree that if we care about life, we ought to care about all life. We should not just care about the unborn. We should care when they are born. When they are
including the ones in prison. I'll say that as well. Yeah.
Unfortunately, we're going to have to leave it right there. Recently, we lost a great member of the Alabama House of Representatives. Steve McMillan passed away at 80 years old. He served his state, and he was a great guy. He will be missed.